Welcome today on this game of To Be or Not to Be. This game is a story from the William Shakespeare, and you choose the story on how it will be next. What will happen in this story. Okay. Yes, of course. We can toggle. Okay, let's see what's happening. Click anywhere. Oh.
William Shakespeare, 1564 AD to whenever he died, was known for borrowing from existing literature when writing his plays. Romeo and Juliet is pretty much lifted entirely from Arthur Brooks' poem The Tragical History of Romulus and Juliet. Dude didn't even change the names. And as recent Shakespeare scholarship has established, the famed play William Shakespeare Presents Hamlet was lifted wholesale from the volume you are about to enjoy. To Be or Not to Be. To Be or Not to Be is both the earliest recorded example of the books as game genre, as well as the first instance ever in the then newish English language that was kicking around of an adventure being chosen by you, the reader. We've gone ahead and added illustrations, plus we've taken the liberty of marking with tiny York skulls the choices Shakespeare himself made when he plagiarized this book back in olden times. They're there in case you wish to put yourself in Shakespeare's shoes, reading this book as he did, stealing plot elements wholesale, and classing up the language as he/you went/go. However, that is not the only way to read this book. Feel free to explore your other options, as each time you read this book, you can go on a different adventure, assuming you don't read the book like 3 quadrillion times, at which point the adventures will start to repeat, and they'll probably seem pretty familiar long before then anyway. Now, take yourself back to history, when ghosts walked the earth and nobody knew velociraptors were even a thing. Steel yourself to experience the magic of Shakespeare as it was meant to be experienced, in a non-deterministic narrative structure, where you end up thinking maybe you made a wrong decision, so you mark the pages you were just on, so you can always go back and make a different choice if you die for some dumb reason. To be or not to be, that is the adventure. Choose your character. Man, what if I just read the acknowledgements instead?
Yeah. Okay, let's choose a character.
You've just been born. Congratulations, good work on that thing. Now, surprise! Babies are boring, so we're gonna jump ahead in time to a point where you're an adult, and you've already lived a bunch of your life. But I promise most of what we're skipping over was really dull. You ate a lot and slept a lot and made some friends, tears were shed, makeouts were totally had, etc. It was a bunch of high school stuff. The awesome stuff starts now. So, let's begin, my friend. Remind me again who you are. Are you Ophelia? She's an awesome lady in her late 20s with a calm, confident, and resourceful demeanor. She's got a +1 bonus to science, but she's also got a -1 weakness against water, so heads up. Hamlet? He's an emo teen in his early 30s. Also, he's a prince of Denmark. Hamlet has a +1 resistance to magic, but there's no magic in this adventure, so this never gets mentioned again as of right now. Hamlet Sr.? He's a king of Denmark, 50 years old. He's super good at fighting and leading men into battle in naps. Let's say +1 to each? Look, bottom line, he's an unstoppable machine of death, and should you choose to be him, you may experience kingly glory. Play as Ophelia. Play as Hamlet. Play as Hamlet Sr.
Okay, what should we choose? Let's try Ophelia this time.
Right, you're Ophelia. You are a beautiful and independent young woman, and although it makes you roll your eyes when you think about it, you've fallen in love with a prince. Prince Hamlet is funny and charming, and he seems to like you a lot. You try not to get too excited about it, because you're worried you might jinx it. But things really are going great. Only it's been hard doing the long distance thing while you've both been off at university. And while you've loved studying capital S science, and you're sure Hamlet's loved studying capital U undeclared, it hasn't been easy. Now that you're both back together in Denmark for his father's funeral and his mother's second wedding, it's been harder still. Hamlet's really sad, and you can't blame him for that since, his dad died. But you wish there was something you could do to help him. When you last saw him, Hamlet mentioned how the castle seemed cold and drafty, and for some reason it stuck with you. You've been sitting at your desk, trying to think of something you could give him that would help with that. A way of cheering him up a little. Remind him he's still got people who care about him. He wears these cloaks all the time, but then he's taking them off in warm rooms and putting them back on in cold ones. If only there was some way you could keep the rooms at a uniform temperature, he wouldn't need to be constantly adjusting his clothes throughout the day. But to do that, you'd need some way of measuring heat, and a way of transporting it through the castle, perhaps through a series of pipes. Your thoughts are interrupted by a knock at your door.
Who is it?
You call.
It's me.
Says your brother.
Come on, let me in.
Let him in. Tell him you're busy.
Let's let him in, see what he wants.
You open the door for your brother.
You can come in,
You say.
but I don't want to hear any opinions about my personal life. If you sleep with Hamlet, you're a slut.
He says. Slam the door in his face. Invite him to enter your room.
Slam his door, go away.
Bam!
That felt good. Larity shouts through the door that he's sorry and just wanted to say goodbye before he left for France. But when you open the door a crack, he sticks his head in and says,
I'm just saying. Have sex with him and you're damaged goods.
You slam the door in his face again, barely missing his nose. You shout through the door that if you're damaged goods, he's an entire shelf of unsellable eggs that went off weeks ago. And also, as your brother, he's got an entirely unhealthy interest in your sex life.
Nuh-uh. You're unhealthy.
Larity shouts in return, and then you hear him stomp away down the hall. What a jerk, and his retorts don't even make sense. Return to desk.
Okay, why do you let me choose one thing?
At your desk, you continue your work on the problem of automatically heating the castle. Hours turn into days and you're generally left alone by both your family and your boyfriend. Your father ignoring you is no big deal, and while you're a little worried about Hamlet not stopping by more often, he has asked you to leave him alone for a while he mourns, and you're respecting his wishes. But if you're going to be honest with yourself, you've also just gotten really absorbed in this problem. You decide to split the problem into sections, delivering heat and knowing when to deliver heat. It would be possible to put servants in every room and have them report when it's too cold, but that's both expensive and unreliable. It depends on the servant, the warmth of their clothes, how much they love to lie to people about what temperature their skin is sensing, and so on. You're wandering the castle grounds when it hits you. You've been thinking about how water expands when it freezes, and how that could be used to tell you when it's cold, but it's not much use for measuring temperatures outside the freezing point. Your father, Polonius, happens to wander by, talking to himself about the evils of drink, and you realize, alcohol! The right alcohol would expand linearly with heat, and by putting it in a slender glass vial, you could measure the size of that liquid, which would correspond 1-to-1 with temperature. Put the same markings on each of these glass vials at the same temperatures, and you've got a universal, comparable, and consistent way of measuring heat. You wouldn't have to rely on a servant's impression. They could just tell you what line the alcohol has reached. You run back to your room to start working on the prototype. Just as you complete it, you hear a knock at your door.
Who is it?
You call, and oh my, who should answer from the other side of the door?
Hamlet.
Seriously, who should answer from the other side of the door? Your boyfriend Hamlet. Your father Polonius. Your best friend Dramysio Mimus.
Oh, interesting. Who should answer? Him.
You decide you want Hamlet to be on the other side of the door. Open it and Hamlet really is at the door. That's so freaky. How'd you do that? Hamlet steps into your room. You haven't seen each other for a while. It's so great to see him. You run up and throw your arms around him and you kiss. It's just like old times. But the moment passes, and when you look at his face, you can see concern written all over it. He's troubled by something. Ask him what's troubling him. Wait for him to tell you.
Nah, let's ask him.
You ask him what's wrong, and, well, there's no other way to put this, so I'll give it to you straight. Hamlet tells you about a spooky ghost and a plan for murdering his stepfather Claudius, pretender to the throne. I'll be frank, it sounds crazy. A ghost? Murder? But he is your friend and lover, and you're not going to leave him hanging out to dry. As gently as you can, you tell him you're pretty sure ghosts don't exist. But even if they do, he needs to be certain that the ghost he saw was actually the ghost of his father.
What if it was some other ghost trying to mess things up? That seems to give him pause. Hamlet admits he never actually asked the ghost for information only his dad would know. It's possible the ghost could be an imposter. I'll come with you tonight, sweetie, you say. We'll go together, and if a ghost shows up, we'll figure out what to do. You're confident no ghost will appear, and this will all just go away. You take his hand and squeeze. Hamlet looks up at you, and you can see his relief. Okay, he says, smiling. Go to see the ghost that evening. Evening comes, and Hamlet leads you to the spot outside where he first saw the ghost. We have to wait till around midnight, he says. I think that's when he normally shows up. To pass the time, you play a storytelling game you enjoy, where you say one word of a story, and he says the next word, and neither of you knows where the story will go. Once, you begin. Upon, he says. A, you say. Time.
The heck is this?
There, you say. Was, he says. A, you say. Beautiful, he says, looking at you. You smile. Prince, you reply, and he smiles back. Who,
Interesting.
he says. Wanted, you say. Two, he says. Kiss, you say. His girlfriend, he says. That's cheating, you say. And then you're kissing. Make out for a while. Don't make out, because you can't believe you're thinking this, but what if a ghost catches you making out?
Whoa. What the? That's a good one to pick up, girls. Let's make out.
You make out for what turns out to be quite a while. As the night is warm and the stars are stunning and there are no bugs here to bite any exposed flesh, and before you know it, you've totally made out as much as it's possible to totally make out. Nice. And you fall asleep in each other's arms. If ghosts exist, and if one really did show up, he certainly had the good grace to leave you alone for your makeouts. Also, he was probably embarrassed. You were both way naked.
Whoa.
The two of you return to the same spot the next evening, and the evenings after that. But it becomes more and more a date night, and less a specter from beyond the grave wants to get some murders done thing. King Claudius and Polonius are not exactly thrilled with the two of you being together, but on the flip side, any urges to commit regicide that were floating around have begun to fade too. Though you talk about it often, the whole encounter with the ghost, if it really did happen, takes on the quality of a dream. Rather than do the long distance thing again, you decide to move in together and get your own place here in Denmark. Together, the two of you work on finalizing the invention of the alcohol thermometer. It works, and even figure out the other half of it, a way to move heated air throughout a building. Congratulations, you invented central heating. It's an invention that all of Denmark wants, and most are willing to pay for. While it's not the largest, you do live in the most comfortable estate in the entire country, thanks to the heating money. One bright summer day, as the two of you walk through the castle garden, you get down on one knee and say words to the effect of, "Sweetie, you're the most important person in my life, and I can't imagine ever living without you. I want to make you as happy as you make me every single day. Let's get married." You mean every word. It's not the most traditional proposal in the world, nor is it the most traditional wedding, but it's wonderful and beautiful and perfect. You're very happy. You don't invite Claudius to the wedding. A few years later, Claudius falls ill with some sort of lung disease, and his doctors are unable to treat it effectively. He passes away only a few months later, having never produced an heir. Shortly after, the two of you become the new king and queen of all of Denmark. Your first child, Alex, is born 5 months later, and you all live very happily ever after. The end.
That's it? Oh. Halmometer. There's one. Game over. Choices made 11, times you were 1, times you were not 0. You created a better story than Shakespeare. Okay. Well, that's it for now. You know how this game is. If you like it, share and subscribe, and I will thank you. Have a nice day.